Hello friends. Welcome to my new JPA, Hibernate programming tutorial series video. In this series, we will discuss about how JPA and Hibernate helps us to achieve persistence in a Java application. Let's move ahead. Today, we will discuss how to delete a Java entity by its primary key in Hibernate using JPA. Friends, in my previous tutorials we discussed how to create persistence.xml file. We also created an entity by name person. In this tutorial, I will refer the person entity and will delete a person entity instance by its primary key in Hibernate using JPA. Moving ahead. Let's create few entries in database table person before deleting person entity by remove method. Here, database has 6 entries for unique person ID from 0 to 5. Let's suppose we want to delete person record for the person ID 2. In order to do that, let's discuss the Java code which result in deletion of person record with person ID as 2. In order to delete an entity by its primary key, let's discuss the code point by point. Number 1. Create a test class as delete entity test in Java, having main method. Moving ahead. Number 2, in order to delete instances of person entity in database by its primary key, we need entity manager. This entity manager can be obtained by entity manager factory. Using Java x.persistence class we create entity manager factory. Persistence class has static method by name create entity manager factory. This method has a parameter which takes in name of persistence unit defined in persistence.xml. After calling persistence class static method, create entity manager factory, by passing persistence unit name as person pu. It creates entity manager factory for us. Moving ahead. Number 3, from entity manager factory object, we create an instance of entity manager. In order to create entity manager we call a method present in entity manager factory as create entity manager. This method returns us back an instance of entity manager. Moving ahead. Number 4, in order to delete instances of person entity in database by its primary key, we have to create entity transaction object. Here, entity manager is responsible for beginning and committing transaction. It has a method getTransaction, which returns an instance of entity transaction. In order to begin a transaction call entity transaction method as begin. Moving ahead. Number 5, entity manager class has a method by name find. This method is responsible for finding instances of person entity in database by its primary key. This method takes in 2 parameters of type as, class, and object. The first argument takes in argument of type class, which let Hibernate know that to which entity query is to be fired. Here, in our case class type is person class. The second argument is of type object, which is the primary key value by which Hibernate queries the database. Here, in our case, we want to query person table in database, based on primary key value as 2. The find method executes and brings single record from table person. This single record is nothing but instance of person entity. Moving ahead. Entity manager class has a method by name remove. The remove method accepts the entity that needs to be removed as an argument. Here, we can see that find and remove goes simultaneously. In order to remove an entity from database, first we have to find the instance of entity by primary key. After finding record for particular entity from database, we call remove method by passing in the entity to be removed from database. Moving ahead. Number 6, calling entity transaction method as commit, to commit the particular transaction of read. Moving ahead. Number 7, if any runtime exception occurs, we first check whether current transaction is active or not. Entity transaction has a method by name is active. If the method returns true, we have to roll back the transaction, by calling entity transaction method as rollback. Finally, we throw that runtime exception to JVM to handle. Moving ahead. after running the test class successfully. Let's move to database and see whether person table is deleted with record having value person ID 2. Execute a select query on the person table. It doesn't displays deleted person record with person ID 2, as shown in the figure. So friends, this is how we can delete a Java entity by its primary key in Hibernate using JPA. So friends, go through this video 2 to 3 times so that, deleting a Java entity by its primary key in Hibernate using JPA concept gets more clear to you. Hope you like this video. Please give 1 minute to like, share, comment or subscribe my channel, or you can visit my website at www.hubberspot.com.